Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Witches the Moon. I'm your Monday hostess, Natalie. This week we are doing your Choose Your Own Topic week. This seems to be a popular week among the hosts as well as among the viewers. So today I will start out by discussing a question that came up from a student of mine recently. She wanted to know what was the difference between banishing and binding. In terms of, she was doing some reorganization on her grimoire, and she wanted to know if those two things went together and kind of what the difference was. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's sort of a basic topic, but I think it's a good one to cover since this question's come up actually a couple of times now over the last year. They are both considered baneful types of spell work. However, baneful doesn't necessarily mean bad, and I want people to understand that. Baneful just means it's something that you're doing against something else or something that could be harmful. That being said, there's a lot of Wiccans who don't believe in doing banishing or binding spells of any kind. They don't like doing return to senders. They consider it an unethical thing to do because you're doing something against someone else. However, these two types of spells serve a specific purpose, and I don't see a problem in using them, and I'll explain why. With a banishing spell, what you are doing is you are working to remove a person from your life or someone else's life or from a situation. You are banishing them away from you. You're not doing any physical harm to this individual, which is why I don't see a problem with doing this. You're simply saying your influence is no longer in my life, and you're getting them out completely. They're gone. So things that would fall under banishing type spells would be like if you are a viewer who's been with us for a while. A few seasons back we had Nimbus River as a host, and he did a diminishing spell, used mistletoe. That would be a type of banishing spell because you're basically eliminating them. Same thing with Sunshine Morning Rays, a hexing spell. I would classify that under banishing because you're burning the person's name away. You're getting them out of your life. You're getting rid of their influence. Hers was slightly different because it was more direct in bringing pain and suffer to somebody. But it's the same idea that you're getting them away from you and getting them out. So banishing means you are sending some influence or some person out of your life. Whereas a binding spell means that person may still be in your life, but you are stopping them from doing something. So, for example, my husband, as much as I love him, he is the father of my children, he is an extremely, highly toxic individual to be around. He's very unhappy with himself, therefore he's very unhappy with everyone else, and he takes it out primarily on me and my oldest child. That being said, he's not somebody that I necessarily want completely out of my life. But I am going to be performing a binding spell to kind of bind out some of this negativity that surrounds him, because the negativity has reached a point where it has gotten critical, and he is just so unbelievably toxic that it's affecting himself as well. He carries an almost black aura around him constantly. I mean, it's just a constant barrage of negativity with this person. So I'm going to be doing a binding with the help of two other witches to try to get that negativity bound, gone, and out of here, so that he can start moving forward in his life in a far more positive manner, and will stop eking his negativity over onto me, because I have come to the conclusion that people don't like to be around me because of his negative influence. He doesn't like me to have a life of my own, and so he's almost always around me, or knows when I'm with friends or something, and he will constantly call or text or something, and it's actually negatively impacted friendships that I've had. So I want to get that out of here, and so I'm going to be doing a binding on that negative energy and getting it out of here. And I'm hoping that it's successful. I've tried it in the past just on my own, and it hasn't been strong enough to override the influence of his negativity. I know that my husband is witch also. He denies it, but his abilities are very clear to me. He's extremely highly intuitive, not very empathic, but highly intuitive, and has foreknowledge on things that's unbelievably incredible. And his mom was the same way. So, I know that it's there. He's just in denial of who he is. And the fact of the matter is, it's just so toxic. I can't keep that influence in my life. I'm ready to move on to a happy life. Life is too short to not be happy. So that would be an instance when you would want to do a binding. You may want to do a binding like on a coworker, somebody that you can't necessarily get away from their influence, but they're having a negative impact on you, your life, or somebody's life around you. And so you may bind that particular person where they can't say something negative about you to you, where they can't do things that might undermine your ability. I've seen that used in the workplace a lot. People will do bindings on coworkers that just absolutely drive them nuts, or who are constantly trying to undermine their ability to get forward. Again, the ethics there, it's really up to you to decide what you think is ethically right or not. We all have to make our own decisions about ethics. If you are Wiccan, many Wiccans will tell you that these types of spells are negative and you're going to get some repercussion. I don't necessarily think that that's true or a bad thing, because here's the deal. Sometimes our actions are just justified, okay? So you need to make sure that what you're doing is justified before you do it. So ask yourself these questions. Is it going to bring harm to the other person? Is it going to bring harm to someone who is innocent of something? Is it going to bring harm to yourself? And is it something that could be handled in some other way, or have you tried other means and they're not effective? Okay. Those are usually my questions for guiding this. And sometimes something that brings harm to somebody is justified. I'm just going to flat out say that. You can disagree with me all you want, but, like it or not, that's why we have jails. Sometimes people are just bad, and you need to do something to stop the bad. And that sometimes entails harming the other person. Now, that being said, I'm not justifying going out and just harming somebody willy-nilly because you feel like it and you feel like it's justified. You really need to stop and think about why you're doing what you're doing, and is there another way that this situation could be handled. Now, binding spells, what does that entail? When I do a binding spell, I will often use something like Shut Up Oil. If you don't know what that is, Lady Grave Dancer, she's phenomenal, and she has fabulous videos on different spells and oils and things that she creates. Her Shut Up Oil is very effective, and I really like it. I've jimmied the recipe a little for my own purposes and with things that I've had, but it's remarkably effective. It works very well. So if what you're trying to do is bind them from saying something against you or saying negative things to you, you can use that. Now, it can be used as a candle dressing. You can use it on a poppet. When I do any kind of binding or banishing spell, I typically will use fire, because fire gives oomph to a spell and it speeds up how quick it works. So I will incorporate sulfur powder. I will incorporate cinnamon. I will incorporate red peppers, chili peppers, sometimes jalapeno juice, anything that's kind of hot and fiery that will kind of give an oomph to the spell. I will also usually use a poppet of some sort, especially in a binding spell. When I'm doing a banishing spell, typically I will just make a sigil for what I want to accomplish, and I'll put it on a candle, and I'll inscribe it into the candle, and then I'll use the Shut Up Oil, and that's my spell. I may also roll the candle in sulfur powder or something of that nature, like a mixture of sulfur, cinnamon. It's stinky, but it works very, very well. So it's a spell I typically will do outside, but I will write that I want whatever that to be gone, and you write it up the candle, well, actually down the candle, because you want it, well, yeah, up the candle because you want it to be burned away. So another thing that I will do, and now with binding spells, I will usually use a poppet, and I like to use something of that person. To me, that's key. You need to have something from that person, of that person, in order to make your poppet effective. So, for example, you can make just a regular standard velvet poppet, but you would want to include in that poppet herbs and things that are related to what you're trying to do. So banishing type of things that stop or protect you, protective types of herbs, you'll pack that into the poppet. But I would also include something like the person's hair, or nails, something of that sort. If you cannot get that person's nails or hair, it really, to be effective, you need something from that person. So, try to snag something that's personal to that person, something that they've touched or has, chewed on, put in their mouth, in some way kind of done something that's got their imprint on it. If you have a shirt or a piece of clothing that this person has worn, a hair thing, something of that nature, you can use that to make the poppet. That's typically my preference. So I will try to get like an old shirt or something that this person's worn a lot, but maybe won't miss, kind of a variety shirt or something, and I will utilize that to actually physically make the poppet. When you make the poppet, you need to charge the poppet by stating to the poppet, breathing into it life with your breath and telling it that it is now this person, it is an extension of this person, and what's done to it is done to the person. And then I will physically take like a twine and I will bind it. Sometimes I will put a sigil on it. A lot of times I put a sigil on it. I'll create a sigil prior to this and I'll write it on the poppet in black. It may not be visible once it's written on there, but that's unimportant because a sigil is a seal. It's a sign, a magical sign that you've created, and you're sealing that. So now that thought is sealed and it needs to be specific. So binding, I will often do that. I will physically bind the poppet and then I hang on to it. I put it someplace like in a shoebox at the top of the closet, somewhere where it's not going to be bothered or touched or messed with in any way. And I have not personally found that binding spells need to be fed. Some spells do need to be fed, like if you do a gree bag, it needs to be fed. Some spells need to be recharged or redone. But I have not found that that's the case. I'm sorry, my hair is driving me crazy. It's still wet. It stays wet for hours after I wash it, and it's just kind of driving me crazy today, so I apologize. But definitely you need to make sure that it's not something that somebody's going to pick up, play with, touch, mess with, untie, or anything of that nature. Sometimes I will actually finalize the spell to make it permanent by saying, this is done and this shall remain, and then I bury it off my property. Once I bury it off the property, I walk away and I don't look back. It is very important that you don't look back as you walk away, because then you are re-inviting all of that to come back. Now, where do I bury it? Anywhere off my property is sufficient, but I have found that on the outer outskirts of a cemetery is the best, because then you're putting an end to it and it's a final end. That's your final resting place. That's where the spell goes. It's done. This is not going to revisit. This is not going to come back. So that's my spiel on bindings versus banishing spells. If you feel inclined, I would recommend going and finding Nimbus River's video. I think it was from season 3 or 4, and it was a choose your own spell. He did a diminishment spell. It's highly effective. Check that out if you've got something that you need to just get rid of out of your life. It's excellent. Also, I believe Lady Gravedancer has a few spells along that in her channel, and they're very, very good. So thank you so much for watching. Blessed be, and have a wonderful week.